Hello everyone, welcome back. For today's class, we will be dealing with KV Puttappa's, that is Kuvempu's Heaven If You're Not Here on Earth. Alright, so make sure to have your textbooks and a pencil. Let's get started. So, KV Puttappa, full name Kuppalli Venkatappa Puttappa. He is widely been popular by his pen name. Pen name is a name that the writer chooses for themselves. So, that is Kuvempu here, and he is considered to be the greatest poet of the 20th century Kannada literature. Not only that, he is the first among 8 people to receive the Gnanapita award. Along with that, he is considered as a national poet after Govinda Pai for his contributions in the Kannada literature. Along with that, he is known to have written Sri Ramayana Darshanam, one of his famous works. So this is regarded as a revival of the era of Mahakavya. Mahakavya is nothing but epic poetry. So he has strived to revive the essence of this Mahakavya and in the contemporary form and charm. So here in the Ramayana Darshanam, he is trying to relate it to the present day scenario. This is written in modern Kannada. And then he has also retained the charm that it has, and then he is known for his many works. One among them is his concept of universal humanism, or what we call as Vishwa Manavata Vada, which we will learn shortly in the poem. And then he has also been given the Padma Vibhushan award from the government of India. And then he has written the Karnataka state anthem, that is Jaya Bharata Jananiya Tanujate. So this is a little bit information about the writer. Now moving on to the translator. Translator is Dr. C. Nagarna. He is the one who has translated the original Kannada poem into English. So Dr. C. Nagarna is also a critic, he is also a poet, he is also a translator, and then he has translated many of Chinua Achebe's works into Kannada. So you need not write a lot about the translator, but his name and his works are absolutely fine but necessary. So these two things about the writer. Now moving on to the concept of heaven and hell before we start off with the poem. Swarga and Naraka, what we call as. So heaven and hell are imaginary things, concepts that happen after our death, right? We are not sure, but in the great texts, in almost all of the religions, you have something called as heaven and hell. Heaven, a person after his death is known to go to heaven if he has led a very good life, very noble life, right? If he has done a lot of good deeds, if he has been compassionate towards other people, he has been honest, right? Then heaven is a reward for him after his death. Now coming to hell, hell is the punishment that is given to a person if he has led a very bad life, where he has lied to a lot of people, cheated, manipulated, he is being deceptive. All these things will take you to hell. So people, we don't know where heaven or hell lies, but we started with this concept, we came up with this idea because we wanted to create some sort of fear in the minds of human beings. If I tell a person not to lie, then he wouldn't listen to me. If I say you lie now, later you will be punished, then a person might think. That is why you have rewards and punishments, right? If you are a good person, then you will be rewarded. If you are a bad person, this starts off from a very young age. A teacher might give you a chocolate for your good behavior, or they might ask you to go out or raise your hands and stand for the entire 1 hour. That is the punishment. So that is how they came up with the concept of hell and heaven. They wanted to invoke that fear in the minds of people, right? So some people started taking this literally. They believe even now that there is an actual concept of heaven and hell, right? So many religions, you see how this is being misused and all. So it is not a geographical location where you can type where heaven is and GPS will take you there. It's not that way. It is the human ideologies that will define heaven or hell. Here you do the good things, you're compassionate, you're empathetic, you're kind to another person, you're noble when it comes to your works, right? So these things are nothing but the heaven. When you're always lying, when you're cheating, when you're manipulating, when you treat others, very rudely. So all this will combine, and this is nothing but hell that you create for yourselves. So Kuempu says that these imaginary things, the concept of hell and heaven, it's definitely imaginary, and it is not for you to worry about in the lifetime. You yourself are creating one. By your behavior, you are creating either heaven or hell. That is what he tries to say in the poem. I hope this is understood. So, you should understand that in Bhagavad Gita, it says that the God says, you do the work, leave the results. I will give you the fruits of the results. You don't worry about the results. Do the work honestly. So that is what you should follow. Do your work, wait for the results. You need not worry about the results, and you should not do any work because you will get a very good result out of it. Do it because you have to do. Right? Do things because you want to do. That will give you peace of mind. Right? So that is what he tells here. Let us start off with the poem. Heaven, if you're not here on earth, where else could you be? So he's putting a question here. This is a rhetorical question. It doesn't need any sort of an explanation, right? It doesn't need an answer, but he's trying to make a point. He says, if heaven is not here, then where else can it be? I'm not sure where heaven or hell is, but it is definitely here on earth. Kuempu is trying to make us realize this one by saying that if heaven is not here on earth, where else can it be? And then he says, if we ourselves cannot be gods, then there can be no gods. Then he says, you're worshipping God, you're looking for God in the temples, you're looking for God in the mosques or church, you're roaming around in search of God. But think for a while, if you yourself are not God, then there can be no God at all. He is not trying to say that I am God. He is not trying to say that he himself is God, but he is talking about the ideologies that make a person similar to that of God. And how can you be considered a God? Suppose there is a person who is in need of food. He has not had any food at all. He has been starving. And then the moment you give him some food, that to that person you would become a God, right? So he's telling, do not go in search of God. You yourself try to become God. How? By having certain qualities of compassion, right? If a person is unhappy, you try to make them happy in one way or the other. Even when you are not in the condition to help, if you try even thinking of helping that person, that means you are reaching those higher states, right? So that is what he tells. You need not search for God in the temples or anywhere. You have to become one by being compassionate, by being empathetic, by understanding the feelings of others, by being noble, by being disciplined, right? And then tells, if we ourselves aren't heavenly nymphs, the nymphs are not elsewhere, right? Nymphs is nothing but the feminine form of demigods. For example, when you're talking about rivers and all, you give a feminine touch to it. You say Mother Ganga, right? River Ganga, right? And Kaveri. So you give the names of the lady goddesses. Sorry, late goddesses, right? So nymphs are nothing but the demigods. They're not gods actually, but they're a little bit lower than that of gods, not in a negative way, the positive way, and they are considered to be feminine forms. All right, and he tells, if we ourselves are not that, then there can be no nymphs at all. That means you go to a river and then you do puja to the river, right? And while doing so, what you do, you put a lot of garbage into it, plastic stuff into it. So he's telling you, consider them as God, but don't make it too much, right? So instead of worshipping, instead of putting a lot of rubbish into the river, for example, the cover of the incense sticks that you're carrying, or the camphors, you have the cover there. Instead of putting them into the dustbin, what you do is you dump them into the river itself while you're uh, doing puja. Puja doesn't have to be an exaggerated form. You're thanking the nature, earth, for all the things that it has done, right? So he tells, do not be a bad person there. Do good things, and by doing so, you yourself will become gods or nymphs or whatever there are. Then he tells, While this roaring stream rushes fast, rolling surf at the edge of waves. Now he's talking about nature, the beauty of the nature. He tells, while this roaring stream rushes fast, he's talking about the rivers, how beautifully the rivers flow, right? And then the roaring stream, how it dances through the forest and all, and it will come down. So then you will see the surf at the edge of the waves. Surf is nothing but the foam, right? So when it comes in a very huge speed, you see the foam forming. It's a very beautiful sight. The sound that you hear, or you might have experienced this in the joke falls. When you're, if you've been through any falls, then you will see how beautifully the water rushes down, and then there is foam found because of the speed. The tender sunshine leans on ward and garden. So early in the morning, when you come out, how the sunlight falls on verdant, green, huge gardens, right? And then he says, then the gentle sun make this earth heaven. So he's telling all these things combined together is itself making heaven on this earth. The stream flowing, the rivers flowing, the beauty of the forest, the flora, fauna, the trees, the birds singing, all these things are nothing but heaven on earth. When are you going to acknowledge that this is earth and not elsewhere, right? And then he tells, in the splendor of harvest and of moonlight, in the splendor of harvest, the process of harvesting is when you cut out the fruits or vegetables when they're ripened, right? So that is the effort of the hard labor of mankind. So man does a lot of work. Along with that, there is moonlight. So when there is efforts put by the human beings, and there is also the contribution of nature, that itself is heaven. Heaven lies all over. I'll tell you once again, in the splendor of harvest, that is purely human labor, right? Human works a lot for them to produce. Rice isn't coming out just like that, right? You have a lot of work there, all the agricultural work, it is because of humans effort. When humans effort is combined with that of nature, that means heaven is all over, right? So he says heaven lies all over with the combination of both humans and nature. Nature is doing its work, but you are here as a human being, you also should contribute something. Once you do that, only then you will form something called as heaven, he says. And the last two lines are very important. He says imbibing. Imbibing means observing, understanding. Imbibing and spilling the song of nectar, the poet does create heaven on earth. And then he's talking about the poet, and he says, the poet, not everyone can see beauty in things, right? It is the poet who can understand any kind of situation and make it look very beautiful. So there are many books, there are many moments where a simple word like she looks beautiful, right? You see how writers try to make that look prettier, right? So that is the poet's ability. So what the poets do is they will imbibe, they will observe all of the things that are going around them, and then they try to make it look very pretty. They try to spill out whatever they've seen. So that is what he tells, imbibing and spilling the song of nectar, right? Nectar, sweetness. So this is how the poet creates heaven on earth. Others can simply see, but it is in the hands of the poet who can observe, and then he will spill out the beauty of nature, and that is how he creates heaven on earth. Quick summary. So heaven and hell concepts are totally imaginary. The poet says not to be fooled by them, but then he says work towards the betterment of human society. This is where he talks about Vishwamanavata Vada, or universal humanism, where he talks about being compassionate, being kind towards one another. All right. So he tells, forget about the concept of heaven and hell. They're not somewhere located and where you will go after your death. It is where you're creating by yourself, how you're creating by yourself. And then he says heaven is only the synonym. Heaven is nothing but your kindness, your empathy, right? Your compassion. All these things are nothing but heaven, and hell is where you are deceitful, where you're very cunning, right? All these things are nothing but hell, he says. And then he says, do not look out for heaven elsewhere, it is amongst you only. And then he says, do not try to look out for gods, do not try to look out for nymphs, heavenly beings, don't search for them. You yourselves are one. You are supposed to have those qualities in yourself. That is how you will become God. And then he talks about nature. He talks about how a river, when it is flowing down, it rushes so beautifully, and at the edge it forms foam, or um, surf at the edge of the waves. And then how the tender sunshine falls on garden, green gardens, large gardens. That is how the God is creating heaven on earth. The gentle sun is required by everything. Sun is the one that nourishes the life on earth, right? So, and the splendor of harvest. Now he tells humans also are supposed to put some work. And then you have nature. When humans in a good way are combined with that of nature, that is when heaven is created. And then he says, it is the poet, it is the writer who will imbibe. Imbibe is nothing but observe, right? He is the one who will understand everything, the poet, and then he will spill. Spilling is nothing but writing it down, showing it to the entire world. In this process, it is the poet who is actually creating heaven on earth. A lot of times students will get confused with this one. Who creates heaven on earth? It is the humans, it is the gods, it is. The actual answer is the poet is the one who is creating heaven on earth according to the poem. Okay, so how? By imbibing and observing, and then spilling the song of nectar. Song of nectar is a beautiful song, beautiful poetry, sweet poetry. So that is how the poet is creating heaven on earth. So this is the short summary of heaven if you're not here on earth. Quick tip, while you're writing in the exams, if you're not sure about this one, please do leave this, because you have very short ability to write the answer here. You have to put a lot of other examples and all. So if you're not sure, please, you can move on to the next one. But it's a very easy one. Make sure to understand this one. It's easy, but then the content will be comparatively less. All right, so that is all. If you've got any doubts or anything, contact me. And that's all for today. Thank you.